And we always hear about the skilled trade shortage. Well, if everybody that's my age or younger or older would open their arms and get two youngsters one under each arm and walk them through and get them started, we wouldn't have a trade shortage. That's what I believe. It's hard for me to envelop a book written by a PhD that's never held a job, that didn't have a .edu or a .org behind his email address. I need a .com guy that's laid in the kitchen floor and tried to figure out payroll come Monday. The phrase one time from David McKinney, who is the second generation, who was a phenomenal guy, is a phenomenal guy. Leaders are readers. And I didn't know what that even meant, but I remember the statement.
Hello, and thanks for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast today. Or if you watch it on YouTube, thanks for watching the Real People Getting Real Results show. So I got the privilege today of introducing you to a friend of mine. I think a lot of him, and he's doing a lot of things out there in the world, and you're gonna learn about those things today. Mr. Greg Crumpton, coming to you from Greenville, South Carolina, right, Greg?
Yes, sir. Beautiful Greenville today. Proud to be with you today, Mac. It's always good to connect with you one-on-one. You know, I follow along with what you're doing, but then to bring it back in person is always really nice. So good to see you.
Yeah, thank you for investing your time with us. We don't spend time with anybody. We invest time with a lot of people, though, and that's what we're doing with you today. And thank you for making that time in your schedule. So the way I always start off the show, anybody who's been following the Real People Getting Real Results show since I started it knows I only feature people that I know somehow, directly or indirectly, and I know you both ways, I think. So what can you share with the audience? How did we come to know each other, if you remember?
Well, I remember. It may be scary for you, but so I'm on LinkedIn. That's kind of my preferred social media outlet. I don't go on the others very often. I just feel like I connect better on there. And I just followed along with what you were doing and what your lovely and talented wife was doing. And I'm a Georgia native, so that was kind of close to home. And so I just started following along and reading what you guys were publishing, books as well as your online content, and watching, like the rest of us, watching your podcast or listening to podcasts, watching YouTube. And I thought, this guy, he's right up my alley. He gets what my thought process is. You communicate it differently than I do, but our premise is the same. And I think that's to help people grow in their journey, whether that be at work or at home or both, usually, because it's hard to separate. And so I'm just a kind stalker. That's how I'll leave it.
Okay. That's pretty cool right there. All right. And it's been a privilege to get to know you. It's been several years now. And I know, I don't remember how long ago it was. It may have been several years since I was on your podcast. And you got a cool last name, but you got a cool name of your podcast. So share that with everybody real quick too.
Well, a friend of mine, Howie Barber, who I've known and worked with and around and just lived that life with for several years. When I started the podcast, it was during COVID, because I like to get out and travel. I work for a service logic company, corporation rather. And we have, like 100 and something locations around the U.S. And my favorite thing to do is go visit our troops that are out there doing the daily battle of HVAC. That's my industry. That's what I do. I enjoy going to see them in their environment. And then when COVID set in, I didn't stop traveling, but people stopped welcoming me to travel. So I'm like, all right, I can't go see people. So what could I do? So Howie and I cooked up, let's do a podcast. So I got a podcast started with friends of mine at Market Scale. They do a lot of video and stuff for the company as well as me personally. They were kind enough to just say, look, you need like a podcast 101 class. So they gave it to me. We got started, and Howie said, we got to come up with a cool name. And so to play off the old movie and the old record Straight Outta Compton, he just changed it to Crumpton. And it's like, but I liked it, just because it was novel.
Yeah.
And then it kind of got going, and people say, hey, I'll be in a trade show somewhere in Las Vegas, and somebody will say, they're straight out of Crumpton. So I guess Howie's a genius, and I didn't realize how much of one. But yeah, that's how it got going. It's just a knockoff and just having a little fun with it.
Yeah, that's a cool name. And some of us older folks understand where it comes from. But what's cool about it is even younger folks who may not know of the tie, once they know your name's Crumpton, it still makes sense. So it's like it makes a lot of sense. So that's a cool show.
Well, I'll tell you a weird thing that happened last week. I was flying to Denver, Colorado, and going to one of our company's events there, and I was sitting down, and people were filing in the airplane, and this lady looks at me, and she looks at my hat. She said, "Are you Greg?" And I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "I see your hat." Well, it turns out she is a coworker of mine who lives overseas and does a lot of our behind the scenes social media and what have you. She was there for the event. We've never met. She was 7,000 miles away from me, and there she saw that hat. So it was pretty funny.
Wow, that's you world famous now.
I guess so.
That's pretty cool. So for anybody not knowing Greg, you're vice president at Service Logic.
Yeah, I am. So Service Logic is a acquisitions type company. We buy mechanical service contractors. We have now bought over 100. But when I joined the company, my company was number 8. So I was early on the team. Typically, I would have stayed and run my former company that I sold to Service Logic. But it was an opportunity for me to hand that off and then go do some other stuff. Well, it was a little bit less or not planned out, but I wound up staying for a 6-month term to do some stuff our CEO wanted done. Next thing I know, here it is 11 years later. So I guess I'm still on probation over there. But
you're doing all right so far.
It's a great company. Like, we've got over 8,000 people now across North America, U.S. and Canada. And but it's really fun because the companies maintain their own name. We don't change the name of the company because we're acquiring what works for them in their local market, as opposed to trying to like just sanitize everything and say, here's your Service Logic playbook. We really work hard not to do that. Yeah. So it keeps the autonomy, it keeps the creativity, and it keeps that local P&L responsibility with the current president. So we try not to interrupt that magic because that's what we were acquiring. And sometimes you see companies acquire a good asset like that. You get good people, you get the customers, and then they want to spray everything white and stick a new label on it. Well, you just ruined the company, what they've worked for and what you paid good money for. So I never have understood it that method, but that's not our method. So it's it really is a fun place to be.
And you guys are still growing. You're still acquiring organizations.
We bought 13 companies thus far this year.
Wow.
We're owned by a private equity group that wants us to grow. That's kind of their MO. And they unleash us to go find quality companies. We bought 13, but we probably looked at over 100 because we know what works. We're not just dumping stuff in the bucket and hoping it mixes well. We really work hard on the composite of the target company to see if it's a mix or a match for what we do. Okay. And if it's not, we don't force feed it. There's too many great people out there that could buy them that it would work for them. Just because it doesn't work for us doesn't mean they're not a great company. But we know what works for us at this point. Yeah,
there's a lot of companies becoming available with the generations transitioning, right?
Absolutely. I say this a lot on my show on Straight Outta Crumpton, but I'm the youngest baby boomer. So I was born in 1964, and I don't have boomer tendencies as much as I have X tendencies, but I like the balance that I get to strike. But there are a lot of really, really high quality companies that aren't huge, but are substantial, that, to your point, that the owners usually, oddly enough, or probably not oddly enough, but a couple that started the company, husband and wife typically, and they run it for 25, 30 years. They get to a point to where this is opportunity for them to reap the work through equity, selling the equity. And then they get to stay on. And what I really like about it is it's like, excuse me, the golden years, so to speak, they can have fun again because they don't have to worry about so much of the payroll and the insurance and all the nuances that go with company ownership, as you guys know. Those go away because our corporate team handles the bulk of that. And then, guys like me, when we sell, we get to go, hey, this is fun again. So you get to get out and go see your customers.
Oh, yeah.
And like I started my business to solve complex mechanical system problems for people. And next thing I know, I'm an insurance buyer the whole month of October. I don't see a customer. And I'm like, this is not right. But
Yeah.
To further your point, great opportunity for a lot of people to cash out and to do it the right way. And so it's fun to see that happening for so many.
Good stuff. And I just happened to be reading a book kind of about that at the moment. We were at FabTech conference. We spoke at FabTech up in Chicago. Are you familiar with FabTech?
Oh, just a little bit. And I learned about it through you, actually.
Okay. Yeah. You guys might want to go check that out sometime. Man, they're massive. If you got anything to do with metal, which HVAC has a lot to do with metal, it's phenomenal. And their exhibition hall is so massive you can't even comprehend how big it is with all the different tools and safety stuff and equipment and welding and bending and everything. They got all the machines set up. I don't know how long it takes them to set up all that equipment, everything to do with metalwork. They got the actual machines in there set up, showing them off. It's pretty fascinating. I think it'll be in Las Vegas next year. But, all right. So we were at FabTech up in Chicago speaking recently, and we had the privilege of being on a podcast with Matthew Nix. He's the president and owner of Nix Industrial up in Poseyville, Indiana, and they do various types of manufacturing. But anyway, after we were on the podcast, they sent me a book, Forging Ahead's the name of it, and an author, not Matthew didn't write it, someone else wrote it, that writes, but they did a phenomenal job. I'm almost finished with it, but Matthew's company was he's the 5th generation leading that company, and it was just a small weld shop before, and through all the other generations. But when Matthew came on board and actually, I guess, a majority owner, he started growing and expanding, and that's what he's doing now. He's acquiring other companies and doing all kinds of things. So it's pretty neat that you're talking about this, and I'm reading a book about it at the moment. But it's a great book. Just it's interesting to me to read it and hear their story.
Well, I love multi-generational businesses. They're not as common probably as we wish they were. A lot of times you have a fabulous founder, you have a less than stellar son, but a lot of times then the grandson comes in, the 3rd generation, and can really make a dent in the company. And kind of, I was talking to a friend of mine actually yesterday. She sold her company to us up in Pittsburgh. Wendy Staso is her name, and she's retired. She was in one of the keys down there with her grandbabies yesterday. And so we were just catching up. But I told her one time, because her son is now the president of the company and an up and coming leader within our organization overall. But I said, Wendy, this is at her retirement. And I said, it's good because you have different levels of leadership. You're a foundational leader. Jonathan is now the growth leader. So what you built is like a launch pad for what he's about to be able to go ignite based on that hard work and those deep relationships and foundations that you built. And I don't know how much it helped her. I hope it gave her some clarity because she was sad to leave, obviously. Yeah. She wanted to see him do well. And but I really think about that there's different steps in managing folks / you better learn how to lead folks and quit managing where you can really take off. And it's been fun watching that family do it. And then you mentioned Chicago and the trade show. Was that at McCormick Place?
Yeah, it's just such a massive place, and
That
it was
place,
completely full.
our industry, our Super Bowl event's called AHR ASHRAE, and McCormick is one of the spots, Vegas, and then Atlanta's the other, and they rotate it. But every time I go to McCormick, it seems bigger than the other venues. I don't know whether it is or not, but I think because when I was an up and coming aspiring leader, my boss allowed me to go to that show when I was probably not quite ready, but almost ready to start thinking about what's next career-wise. Yeah. And I remember walking through there, growing up out in Conyers, Georgia, thinking, wow, this is a building. But it's always fun to go back there and kind of relive that mentally.
Yeah, it's huge. FabTech fills up all 3 floors or 4 floors, how many it has. And then there's another building out that you have to leave the main building and go to another massive building. They fill that thing up too. It's incredible.
Crazy. Well, I'll definitely check that out, and I'm going to make a note for that book. It sounds like a great read, so I appreciate it.
Forging Ahead, it's very well written. And what's cool, Matthew talks about in there, is his company's he considers it. I think he started in 1902, but he says basically he took over a 100-year startup.
There's a lot of that. The company that I grew up in the Atlanta market, was founded in, I want to say, 1945, post-war. And they started as a tire recycling company. They were recycling tires and selling them to Fort McPherson there in East Point, Georgia, for the military.
Yeah.
And that evolved into a refrigerator appliance store. After the war quit, they didn't need to sell as many tires, but people were beginning to appreciate refrigerators in their house. Then the refrigerator broke down, so they had to have a guy to go out and fix it. And next thing you know, they're now over a $500 million mechanical company based in Atlanta, based on that founder's vision of serving. He didn't know what he needed to serve all the time. At first it was tires, then it was home appliances, and then it was full-blown mechanical. But that foundation that he built, Mr. McKinney, was strong. He hired my dad in 1967. And oddly enough, I still have an uncle that works there. And I was talking to him the other day, it's my mom's brother. When he retires in the next year or so, it will be the first time since 1967 that we didn't have a family member working at that company.
Wow. You're talking about McKinney's?
Yeah.
Yeah, we spoke for them right after COVID. We were supposed to speak in person, but we ended up having to do it through video at that time. Yeah, they're a big outfit. Yeah,
they are. I worked there, for a long time. My wife worked there, my sister. I mean, we've had the whole family go through that place.
That's outstanding. That's pretty cool. So let's get into some leadership and personal growth type talk. You and I could talk all day, it seems like, about anything. So, and also I forgot to share with anybody who's watching on the YouTube channel that I apologize. My camera quality is poor. Actually, it may be better for you. I might look a little better with poor quality camera.
I'm enjoying it, Mike.
This kind of looked like I got on the, what you call it, the airbrush setting or whatever, where it makes you look like you ain't wrinkled up mold like I am.
Well, I need to borrow that one.
But I got to get that fixed. But I don't know what happened today. But so you and I met because of my space of leadership and development, and you in that space as well. You do a ton of things. When I looked at your LinkedIn, it's like, man, Greg does like a million things, and we've been talking about some of those things. But let's shift to leadership and personal development type stuff. I know your passion. I read a little bit about your book. I got to get your book and read it. After reading the blurb you had on it on your LinkedIn page, really got me interested in it, because you're talking about the untouched people. So talk to me about that book relative to personal growth, leadership development. Why did you write that book? Tell me all about it.
Well, it was a labor of love. First of all, it was somebody asked me how long it took me to write it, and I said 61 years.
Hey, that's right.
So many of what the little life's moments, Mac, I tried to capture. And I've always kept a fairly decent journal of things that occurred. I just didn't know I was journaling. I thought I was just making notes.
Yeah.
But I got fancy and called it journaling. So I have, ever since I was in my early 20s, I've thought about building myself, building a company, how I could be different. And I've always embraced my peers, my coworkers. Like, what did they know that I don't know that I could steal from them that would make me better at my craft, first technically. And then as I moved into project management and sales, continue to try to learn. I had a great mentor in my dad. I loved working with him. He was an excellent father. He was an excellent boss. He was a great mentor, and he was a really good friend, because we could have a disagreement about how to run a piece of pipe and, where it should go or what have you, and then say, okay, let's go get lunch. We wouldn't even, it was our dynamic. So I learned a lot about it from him. But he was a tough cookie on the outside. And I think he grew up that way because of his childhood, how he had to grow up. But he was soft inside, and I learned a lot about the human side of people. And he didn't know always how to communicate, but he always wanted to. And he would talk to me about people and how he was trying to work with them. So when I guess I started teaching at the Union Apprenticeship School in Atlanta. After I got out of the apprenticeship school, I came back as an instructor. So I started figuring it out young. I was 25 years old teaching people who are older than I was. And if you're going to do that, you better know your stuff, because they're going to call you out. So I got really good technically at air conditioning and physics and electricity and all that technical side. But I felt like on my drive homes, at night after class, what was I missing? And it was being able to communicate well. I grew up, I was not a stellar student. I didn't enjoy traditional school. I did enjoy shop class. That's probably what allowed me to graduate, quite honestly.
Yeah.
But I started figuring out the people part. So I went to a class at the Georgia Tech, put on a session through continuing ed they had, and it was called Financial Management for Non-Financial Leaders. And I'm like, I need to go to that, because I don't know anything about reading the P&L or understand a balance sheet or anything. So I went to that, and I learned the basics of accounting. But what I really learned was humility through the eyes of watching the people in that class, because it was such a phenomenal group of people. There was about 12 or 13 people total. And the leader of Longhorn Steakhouse was in there. Okay. There was a guy, a big wheel at Chick-fil-A, one of the companies you guys support and work with. Just several influential people that I thought, for me were out of my league, so to speak, different class of people, what have you. But listening to what they were struggling with, it wasn't accounting. It really wasn't. It was understanding how to connect with people so that the accounting is a recording of history. So what could they do to affect the recording of history? And they figured out in the course of this, I think it was 12-week course, that if they could connect with their people better, they wouldn't have to worry about losses of where all the steaks went out the back door. They wouldn't have to worry about reiterating the fact of saying my pleasure every time you say thank you at Chick-fil-A. And it was like a turning point for some of the folks in there, for sure. I'm assuming based on what they said, but it was darn sure a turning point for me, that if I needed to have a desired outcome, I needed to rewire how I thought about it. And it wasn't just X's and O's like you see the basketball guy, coach drawing on the sideline.
Yep.
It was interacting with the players. So that really taught me, okay, you got to get deeper into this. So I started, again, from nothing, understanding people-wise, into really digging in and learning and reading about Jim Rohn and understanding a guy from Iowa cornfield of how he thought and how he could make it. And, he was building a company at the time while he was developing this leadership plethora of library information that he built. So that was kind of cool to learn. And then I started reading Price Pritchett, a guy out of Dallas, Texas, and just connecting with people. And these are old school thinkers. And then I got into reading like Malcolm Gladwell. And when I read The Outliers, what a change that was for me. And then reading Tom Peters stuff. And when he came out, I remember so well, Mac, I was in an airport going somewhere to a training class, technical training. And there was a magazine that was front and center at the newsstand called Fast Company. It was volume 1, edition 1, and Tom Peters was in that magazine. And I remember reading that magazine, and it was just a quote of Peters. It wasn't a big deal. But I was reading the magazine, and I thought on the airplane when I was reading it, okay, there are other people that are just as weird as me out there. And what I mean is that you can do your task day to day and still build your personal EQ, what we call it now, your ability to connect with people and lead people. That was a big turning point sitting on that old beat up US airplane back in the day.
That's pretty cool. And what's the name of that book? I don't want people to think it's Untouched, because Untouched is what you was talking about. That's what you call the folks, but I didn't mention the name of the book, so I don't want to be confused about it.
The name of the book is Deep Knowledge.
There you go.
This is the first of 2. I've got the second one about to come out. Very similar platform. Mac, this book, I know I rambled a lot in how I got here, but 61 years of what can I do to make something better? And I didn't even know it when I was young, what I was trying to do. But now that I can look back, there were little things. And a friend of mine who I worked so closely with, he was at McKinney's for 30 years. He and I are still best buddies, but he told me one time, he said, I learned so Jeff Birch is his name. He's 10 years older than I am. He had been in the Navy and had a family, and I was still living in my parents' basement trying to figure out what I was going to do. But
wait a minute. You mean not only today's generation live in their parents' basement? You mean some of the previous generations actually lived in parents' basement too?
We did. And I remember my dad telling me, you realize when you graduate, that's your last night here, right? I said, yes, sir, I do. And he told me that about every other day. But Jeff told me, Mac, one day we were working at WAGA, it's a TV station in Atlanta. The guy we worked for, he was a little bit of a unique character, but he was a good guy. So we were there working, and we were about to go to lunch. And I think I'll recount that in the second book. I said to this guy, Gene was his name. I said, Gene, we're going to lunch. Can we bring you anything back? And he said, no, I'm good. I'll see you guys when you get back. So we get in the truck, and we were laughing and cutting up about, just stuff. And Jeff said, man, you sure scared me a while ago. I'm like, why is that? He said, well, you asked Gene if we could bring him back something from lunch. I said, why'd that scare you? He said, because I know me or you, neither one have any money. So I guess I would have had to figure out how to get some money for Gene's lunch. But I thought there's another step that's telling me that I can do more in my current role. So I've just always taken the Kaizen strategy of doing, tweaking, measure it, do it, tweak it, measure it in a continuous cycle. And, when you're young and immature and naive, every step could be a huge step in your journey. You learn something, you go, why did it take me this long to learn that? And then as you get to be 61, you start refining your learning. You're learning smaller increments, but you're still learning. I had a great session last week. A lady named Cindy Skalicki. She came and spoke to our group. I had a safety meeting in Denver, the one I was telling you about with the hat when I got on the airplane. I learned again, you're never too old or too resistant if you let it soak in to learn. And I think keeping that mantra has allowed me to help more people along the way. Like right now, I got 3 20-year-olds I'm working with and a 15-year-old because they're all interested. 3 of them work for some of our companies, and I'm mentoring them one-on-one. And then one of them's a 15-year-old kid. He lost his dad last year to cancer.
Wow.
And so I'm doing stuff with him just to try to nurture what he won't be able to get in his finishing years at home.
Yeah.
So I just love the journey. I love seeing these kids grow. I've got a young lady I spoke to last night, super excited for her. She wants to get into the industry. And I spent 20 minutes on the phone with her, and I'm like, this girl gets it. You know, she's 23 years old or 24, ready to take on the world. And as you know, women tend to mature quicker than our side of the equation. She's ready, and I can't wait to get her going. So that's what I do, man. I just do that stuff naturally now. I don't even think about it. I embrace. I want to bring, and I do concentrate on my industry because that's where I spend most of my time. And we always hear about the skilled trade shortage. Well, if everybody that's my age or younger or older would open their arms and get 2 youngsters one under each arm and walk them through and get them started, we wouldn't have a trade shortage. That's what I believe.
Yeah. Talking about that, I saw someone on LinkedIn recently was posting. They posted something about, a shortage. And then I think they were in manufacturing, and that's my background, manufacturing. And they were talking about just asking for ideas, what they could do. And one of the things I told them, I don't know if anybody will ever do it, but they all should do it, is have a tour, have the public come through and let them see what's inside the doors. Most of them have the big gate up and the fence closed and a guard at the gate. And nobody, unless you work there, you don't get to go in and even see what they do. And whenever I read that, I was just thinking back to my years. Early on, we had like family days once a year. It's been a long, long time ago. That was in the probably late 80s, early 90s that we did that, but we stopped doing it even back then. But I mean, I was just frontline entry-level employee, so I didn't have anything to do with the decision-making part of that. But I always thought it was neat. But they would have family day, and we did all kind of stuff. They had the Dunkin' booth and cookout and all that outside in the field, out beyond the doors. But they also had the doors open, and we had it cleaned up and squared away and safety tape and stuff like that. And anybody could walk their family through and give them a tour of the facility and show them what they're doing. But I think companies, they should, once or twice a year, they should open it to the public at a minimum, do it maybe to the high school students. And while they're doing that, include it open to the public. Anybody in any industry and at any age could come through and actually do tours while it's actually operating, so they could see the work the folks are doing and talk to some of the people, let them hear about the work they do. There's nothing like watching a 7-axial CNC machine make something. Oh yeah. It's incredible. Now you said something that's funny, because that's the cleanest the shop got every year too. So it was a good way to make sure the shop got clean. What I have been doing as of late, Mac, I'm trying to talk to middle schoolers, because I think if we wait till they get to high school, they can become a little bit more jaded, because they're in that nasty age group at that point where most tend to know more than they think, or think they know more than they actually do. I had a chance to talk to a 6th grade class not too long ago, and I picked my iPhone up, and I'm going back to where you were with this. I said, what happens when you press the button on this iPhone? Well, that's when I tell my mom to come pick me up. I'm like, no, that's the result of you pushing that button. What happens? They had no idea. Walking them through an abbreviated tour of all the things that happen when you push the icon on the phone, they went, wow, I never knew all that had to happen. I think that speaks to what you're saying about awareness, is creating awareness of what some of these industries and some of these opportunities are for kids, because
a lot of them grow up in a very sterile bubble of what real life is like. Between COVID, between not trusting people out in the wild and kidnappings, and you have to be over. You probably should be overly protective, considering what protective was 20 years ago. You should be overly protective right now.
Yeah.
But they just don't have the experiences that my generation had, nor yours, to get out and see what happens. See a guy climbing a telephone pole and be curious about it and ask him. Because I'm that kid, I'd walk up and say, I'd like to get a set of those spikes because I'm a deer hunter.
Yeah.
How do you get to do that for a living? Having those kind of awareness conversations. But to your point, having a open tour of the shop, of your plant, phenomenal idea. But I think anything we can do to increase awareness of what opportunities are out there. I use other examples. When you get up in the morning, what's the first thing you do? Usually two things. You cut the light on and you go to the bathroom. Magic had nothing to do with any one of those. Science behind the electrical, science behind the plumbing. And when you talk about stuff like that, they're like, I never even thought about it because the light always works when I click it on unless the bulb's burnt. So just walking through those little daily encounters that they've taken for granted because nobody's ever poked or prodded on it, I find can be pretty impactful or a good way to connect anyway.
Yeah, the same thing you're talking about is the same thing Rhea and I do. You relative to leadership and personal growth, whenever we take the stage, one of the first things we usually say is our intent here is to provoke thought and raise awareness. What you do with it's up to you, but we want to have you thinking about something maybe you hadn't thought about and understanding something maybe you haven't understood. And that's all we want to do. It's the same thing you just said. The reason it works in either place is because those are principles. And right. I mean, go ahead.
I just think it's like cracking the egg. What you do with it, you can scramble it, fry it, poach it, eat it raw, whatever you want to do. But if somebody doesn't crack it, you don't know the goodies in there.
That's right. So when did you start your personal development journey? When did you start? I mean, I didn't start till I was 39. I ain't never heard of this kind of stuff until I was 39 years old. What was your journey like? How'd you get started reading and studying personal growth, leadership development?
I heard the phrase, and I hear it more often. I heard the phrase one time from David McKinney, who is the second generation, who is a phenomenal guy. Leaders are readers.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what that even meant, but I remember the statement. And it really started, I left McKinney's and went to a couple of other companies because I wanted to experience what it was like working for an OEM. So I worked at York. I wanted to work for a little bitty shop, and I worked for a guy named David Shearer, bending conduit for automation. And then I did that for a couple of years, and then I came back to McKinney's because that's the kind of company I realized I wanted to work for.
Yeah.
A big independent that was big enough to matter, but wasn't corporate. And I remember coming back, and David would always hold these State of the Union or State of the Company addresses once a year. He would pull everybody into the sheet metal shop, which was cleaned that day, probably the cleanest it got all year. And he just started talking to us about the company and how the pipeline of work looked and who was new and, just a general briefing on the company status. And I remember the day before that, my dad said to me, I worked in the field. My dad was in the office. He said, you need to come to this tomorrow. I said, I don't need to come up there and hear that guy talk. He's like, no, you need to come up here and hear this guy talk. So reluctantly, at my father's prodding, I showed up to hear David McKinney give the State of the Company address. And I remember David McKinney looking at me, and he said, looked at me directly, and he said, welcome back to the company, Greg, called me by name. And he told all these project managers, if you want somebody that's going to get after and get your job done on time, talk to this guy right here. We're glad he's back. And man, my world just kind of shifted at that moment because I was embarrassed. I was proud. I was totally taken aback because I had never had anybody publicly say anything other than, your family. They're always giving you false hope. But having somebody acknowledge your work ethic and your ability to get stuff done was great. So about 2 weeks after that, David McKinney had another, I call it pep rally, and I mean that as a term of endearment. I don't mean it sarcastically. Get everybody together. And he was giving out coffee mugs, and it had the BHAG, right? BHAG.
Yep.
And for people that are older than 40, you know what a BHAG is: a big, hairy, audacious goal. And David had read the book on BHAGs, and that's what started my journey, because in the field, I started reading that book slowly because I was never a good reader. And from that moment on, I've been ramping up my reading to, sometimes now I read a book a week, because I can't get enough of how somebody else thinks about some of the stuff I think about in different angles of approach. Because when I'm giving a talk, or, maybe I'm leading the safety summit like I did last week, I blend messages. I take a little bit of Crumpton, I take a little bit of Mac, I take a little bit of Tom Peters, and maybe a little Steve Jobs for this particular talk. And I make the recipe based on who I'm talking to, but the content is all rooted in good. I try to bring nuggets of wisdom and nuggets of good to deliver, but I do it in my own style, which, it probably works for some people, and some people probably can't stand it, but that's all I know to do. But that's when it all started, when I saw the BHAG coffee cup, and I had to figure out what that meant. Yeah,
that's good stuff. And for those that don't know, you're talking about Good to Great by Jim Collins, right? That book. Yeah. And just listen to your last little bit of words there. This segment, I was thinking about, I know you've heard it, but so many people let knowing prevent them from learning, right? So many people, they think they know, so they don't learn. That's why a lot of people don't read. They think they already know. But the people who read the most know how much they don't know the most. People like you and me and Rhea, John Maxwell, Stephen Covey, all these people, books that we're reading, those people usually are reading books nonstop because they've actually pushed past the point of thinking they know everything to realize they don't know very much at all when you look at the massive amount of knowledge there is.
Well, that's the final step of learning, isn't it? Or the first step is you think you know it all, or no. The first step is you know nothing, and then you think you know it all, and then you realize you don't know nothing. So I've completed the cycle. I don't know anything, and that's why when I look at your backdrop and see all of your library of books, and I look over here in my closet and I see mine, and there's so much information that. And it's not all right, or it's not all accurate, and it's not all true.
Yep.
But it doesn't matter, because that's one more input to our microprocessor brain that we get to figure out, why did he write that, or why did she say that? Then you can go down that rabbit hole of human psychology and figure out all these different things. So if you get started learning, it's hard to quit wanting to learn. And the hardest part for me, Mac, right now is making time. Everybody's time crunched, but you have to, and you've heard it, and you probably have said it more than once, you got to block out time to learn. You got to make it on your calendar, or put it on your calendar and make it a priority. If you don't, you'll never get to it. One of my tenets of running my company, we had a one pager, a bullet point. So we tried to run the company based off, and it said, if you don't write it down, you're not going to do it, because it could easily slip off your mind, or there's something unique about writing. And I'm a writer. I've got a notebook and an old mechanical pencil. If I write it something in my brain just gave me the, you got to go do that now, son. You can't talk about that anymore. You got to go execute. So I think that's good for me. My style is I have a desire to have high accountability for what I commit to doing. And that can be tough. You know that. The hardest thing in the world to say is no for some people. Yeah. And if you want to, you really have to balance being a pleaser versus a doer. And I'm both. I want to make people happy by doing for them, but I'm also learning to be stingy enough to say, no, I've got to have that time for what I need to do. And, you know, my wife and I, we have a great relationship, and we're able to talk about this kind of stuff. And it's fun when I can say now at this point that I've gotten to, I won't say matured yet, but working towards maturity. I just don't want to do that, and I'm not going to do that. What a blessing that is when you get comfortable enough to be able to say that. And I'm not talking about going to a funeral of somebody you need to go to. I'm talking about prioritizing your day to day. Do I stay and write an article like I did yesterday for a guy I committed to writing an article for? Or do I go play pickleball at the church with a bunch of people that are worse than I am? And that's saying something. It's all about my deceased mother said, people make time to do what's important. And for me, that begins with writing it down and committing to it.
Yeah, that's some good stuff right there. And I remember way back, probably 2008, when I first discovered this type of content. It was the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People for me. And I learned so much from Dr. Covey that stuck like super glue to me. And one of the things he talked about early on that made me think a lot, just like you're talking about, he said it pretty simply for me at that time was, how do you say no? You got to have a stronger yes burning on the inside. And a lot of people don't have a stronger yes. So they just say yes to everything. And then they end up doing nothing really meaningful because they're doing, whatever pops up. I remember that in my journey of, as I was working my way up through different levels of positions, people would always, I'd just do whatever the boss wanted me to do because I could do it. I'd figure out how to do it and make it happen. And whatever path they wanted me to go down, that's the path that I went down because it didn't matter until I got into lean. And then it's like, I don't want to do nothing else but this. And if I can't do this, I don't want to work here anymore. And they wanted me to become a plant manager. So they were setting me up I was a lean manager, and then they wanted me to be the quality manager too. And then they wanted me to learn other stuff so I could be positioned to be a plant manager. Earlier in my career, I would have thought that was amazing that somebody wanted me to be a plant manager. But by that point, I didn't care nothing about being a plant manager. And that's when I resigned and started my own lean consulting business. So I understand what you're talking about big time.
Well, it doesn't matter till it matters. And then when it matters, that's the deal. You're on it from that point forward. It's and when you get started, man, it's such that you said something a while ago that hit me like a ton of bricks. And I don't remember this, of having a stronger yes than the no. And man, what a great way to look at that.
Yeah, it stuck with me. I probably didn't write that down. I'm sure I highlighted it at the time. But you hear me say a lot of things. I write a lot of things. I do a lot of podcasts, and people are like, how do you remember all that? I have no idea because I don't study it. I don't know what's in most of all those books back there. I have no clue what's in most of them, but I probably know a little bit about something that's in every one of them and the hundreds of them that you don't see that are electronic or audio books or, all that type stuff. But what I talk about, like you said earlier, when I meet someone, something will come out of my subconscious that I ain't even thought about. I didn't even remember. It's like I'm relearning it at the moment. It just comes out, but that's from that daily reading. For me, it's been 17 years. I read every day and I call it the leadership drip. That's what transforms us is the drip. It's not the conference. And I think Rhea talks about it, but she heard it from Simon Sinek. He talks about kind of like going to the dentist, right? You go to the dentist twice a year but it's the daily brushing and flossing that keeps your teeth in your head. If all you did was go to the dentist, your teeth's going to fall out. You got to do it's good to go get charged up. I call that the fire hose. When we're speaking to someone, we're blasting them with a fire hose, for 30 minutes, an hour, a whole day, multiple days, depends on the situation, but they're getting sprayed with a fire hose nonstop. And part of our mission when we're speaking to them is you got to invest in your own development. A few minutes a day. I recommend for people, the blue collar folks don't like to read. I tell them a paragraph a day. Can you just read a paragraph? Takes you 30 seconds.
That's right.
Of something, because usually you'll read more than that but if you go there thinking all I got to do is 30 seconds, you can close the book, walk away. You've kept your commitment to yourself. A lot of people will do that.
Yeah. I would, it's funny because yesterday in that article I was writing, I was referencing that you have to invest in yourself. It's not, and last night when I was talking to the young lady, this is not a 7 to 3:30 or an 8 to 4:30 gig. This is a lifestyle. And if you're going to live it, you got to commit to it. Years ago, I had a quote, and actually had it in the book that says, when did good enough become good enough? And mediocrity to me is just a horrible plague on our society. It tends the goal, 7.5. I accomplished it. It kind of looks all right, or it kind of sounds all right. I'm good with it. By whose standard are you good with that other than yours? So you've got to ramp up your standard personally. We all do continuously, because it's like I watch my wife painting. She's painting oil painting.
Okay.
And she says, what do you think about it? I mean, man, that thing looks great. And she's like, well, I'm only halfway done with it. I'm like, oh. But for me, it looked good. But for her, she knew that there was so much more to build onto that painting. And that's what we have to get to. I go out and see somebody servicing an air conditioner. Maybe if they spent 30 more seconds with a damp rag and a little bit of WD-40 and wiped down the panel, how much difference would that make to anybody else? Not much. To two people, the customer that walks by there and go, wow, that person really actually takes pride in their work. That's a good thing. But for you personally to be able to walk away from a piece of equipment knowing it's better than it was when you found it, I can't not do that. Like I rent tools. I rent stuff at Sunbelt Rentals, and like I'm the guy power washing it before I take it back. Because that's my dad baked that into our brains of doing one more step. And that's part of our tenets to the company. One more step in everything you do. If 9 steps are required, go ahead on the 10th one. And I've heard the quote so many times, go the extra mile. It's not very crowded.
Yeah.
So I could do this stuff, Mac. I love it. I love the concept of it. I want to energize people to get out and find that fire. What stokes them internally? Maybe they're I don't know. Maybe they're an attorney and they need to be the best person at the practice on, cases one or whatever metric you use individually. How do you ramp that up and ramp it up to a point of being better than you were yesterday? That's always my goal. And I've got, my Kaizen tattoo I've showed you before.
Yeah.
That's what I really believe in. And I wear that with pride, because when I look at it, I know I'm not through.
Yep. Yeah. And that's some deep knowledge right there, Greg.
I like the way you work that in.
That's some deep knowledge. And let me just make sure everybody understood too what you were saying when I'm talking about deep knowledge, playing off the name of your book, which is I recommend folks go out and dive into that and get on your podcast and listen and learn who you are, because you're sharing some good stuff. But when you were talking, I was thinking about, you're talking about doing the little bit of extra. And I was thinking, just a thought I had is it ain't hard to outshine folks who are living in the dark. Right. And most people living in the dark because they're not learning and growing. But as soon as you start learning and growing, and you start that, what I call the leadership drip, so whatever that is for you, 5 minutes of a podcast, 5 minutes of an audio book, 1 paragraph of a paperback book or an ebook, something like that. And you do that constantly over time, it doesn't seem like much, but it is so much compared to people who don't do it at all, which is most people. Most people are doing no more than required. That's usually what they're doing at work and at home. They do the minimum required, and then they wonder why life sucks.
Well, what I find really fascinating is when you challenge people to read something or, prepare for a class coming up or whatever, you always hear, I don't have enough time. And then you catch them off guard and you say, well, hey, who won the voice championship on last night? Oh, well, Bob won. Okay, you got time to watch that silliness and you ain't got time to read a chapter. Help me understand that. And I know part of it's maturity, and I was that goofball kid. I didn't read like I should have when I was young. But if you're going to be the difference, you got to make a difference. And in order to make a difference, you got to be different. So that's part of it for me.
I'm gonna share, make sure I get it right. I'm gonna look at it real quick because what you were just talking about the TV and then earlier you talked about Jim Rohn. I shared a quote today on LinkedIn, Facebook, all my social media, and it's a quote from him. He says, "Owning a TV is cheap. Watching it is what's really expensive."
Boom. And think about how many years ago Jim wrote that and how media has changed since then and how it's infiltrated every nuance of life. I mean, you go to the grocery store, there's a screen blasting at you on a message of what I'm trying to just swipe my credit card and I got 9 different options of what I need to do. And I'm like,
just let me out.
I just want to hit yes. And I'm agreeing to the $14.77 for this box of cereal, whatever it may be.
Makes you want to pay cash so you don't have to leave a tip for the person standing at the counter handing you something.
I am a cash guy. I started carrying cash when I owned the business because we worked downtown Charlotte a lot and we had a fleet of vehicles. And sometimes I would get a call from a wrecker service saying, your truck is about to get towed if you don't get down here. And it was half the price if you paid them to drop it versus what it was to drag it to the impound yard. So I learned that Ben Franklin went a long way downtown Charlotte. That's a whole other story.
All right. So we usually keep these things around an hour. They can go longer, they can go shorter. But anything you wish I would have asked you or something you wish you would have talked about already? And don't worry about the time limit. But if there is nothing, we'll start wrapping it up. If you got plenty more, we can keep on trucking. Mac,
I feel like that we could probably reserve 3 more days to do it. But in the essence of respecting people's time, I've just really enjoyed getting to talk to you. It's cathartic to get to talk about what burns deep inside for me, because I want people to be excited about their careers and their families. I've got a good life. I want to make it better, but I want to help somebody that you said it a while ago. Life sucks. I'd love to help you get unsucked, if that's even a word, of working with people. And I don't do it professionally yet. Maybe when I get older, I will. I don't know. But I want to help people get out of their rut or get them going and or get them re-going or help them finish out strong if they're at the tail end of their career. What can they do? And I think mentoring can be an overly used word these days, but coaching and counseling people, listening to people, having a cup of coffee with people in real life.
Yeah.
And I said this week to someone, the further we develop as an AI-driven world, the more meaningful a one-on-one cup of coffee is. And I really believe that. And I feel like there's a resurgence of people that want human connection.
Yeah, I think that's what's happening too. And for people who are in our space, the younger folks really have an opportunity. If you truly start reading and learning, you're gonna stand out, because unfortunately most people are not going to learn at the level like a lot of people can do what I'm doing and pretend to know. Like same thing as you, they can pretend to know what you know, they can pretend to know what I know, but I really know. and you really know. But I was playing around. I could take one of my quotes and say, make me a 1,000-word article out of one quote of mine. And just like that, somebody could do it. Somebody could download my book or your book, take a copy a couple of pages, a couple of paragraphs from each chapter and say, write me a book on, and they can have it like instantly and put their name on it like they wrote it. And it's just, I mentor a lot of young folks who are coming up like me and you, really is absorbing this stuff. And I tell them, don't stop. Don't let AI shortcut what you've been doing. Keep doing it, because as time passes, you're going to become more and more valuable, because when you walk in a room and know it versus you can put it down and you know what'll soon to be, you can do videos with your own voice and your own face, and nobody's going to be able to tell that it's fake, or you can write something or do an audio. I said, when you walk in the room and actually know it, you're going to become highly, highly valuable. Or you can go to lunch after, somebody asks you a question, you actually know the answer versus it's all fake.
And you're going to be highly sought after by being that person. I referenced that piece I was writing yesterday. I struggled with some of the words, and I'm so glad I did. I didn't take the easy way out. I didn't pull up Grok and say, rewrite this. I struggled through it, from it sounding really crappy to the finished product sounding, fairly good. But I did that based on what is up here and right here in my heart, not what Elon Musk Grok tool can do. Now, listen, I'm all for it as a tool. I'm totally for it as a tool.
I agree.
It's got to be part of the equation, not the equation. A friend of mine who's on my safety team in Denver, he sent me a note yesterday. He said, do you have any information on this particular topic? It was hydrogen fuel cells and how to work around them safely. And I said, Peter, I don't, but let me play around. So I asked Grok that question. If I've got an HVAC technician working in an area with a hydrogen fuel cell, what are the baseline safety metrics? And it gave them to me. So I sent them to him and I said, this is AI created, but it's a start for you. Don't let this be it. Let this be the beginning, and then dig in. So that to me is using it as a tool, not as a replacement for Peter taking that draft and making it his own. So that's how I look at it.
Yeah, I don't use it for any of my content. I might use it for getting ideas for marketing, like for copy to go on a website or something like that, but not anything I'm writing content wise. I don't touch it, because I don't want to. And I don't know if I will or not, but most books written past 22 or 23, I ain't that interested in reading them, because I don't know whether, it can be real. It can be AI. It can be real. The stuff's good. I do look at it and read some AI, just see how good it is. And it's really good with leadership or personal growth. But I want to hear from real people who've experienced some stuff, who've transformed, and they know. That's who I want to learn from. So I find myself reading a lot of older books these days, especially.
Well, there's a lot of good older books. If we just look back, to your point, I find, and having just written the book, this is kind of an oxymoron. A lot of the books are the same thing regurgitated, and I'm always looking for that new spark. But a lot of times I get halfway through a book, and right now I'm reading an old book, the leader or owner's mentality, or I forgot the exact name of it.
Yeah.
But it was written 15 years ago. But the principles apply more today than they did back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
That's the key though. The principles haven't changed. The story, when you share about a principle, I share about a principle. The principle's no different than Jim Rohn shared about, but the story is different, because I lived a different life. I applied it in a different way. You lived a different life. You applied it in a different way. And that goes back to what you said early on, is why we need to be unique. If we just be ourselves, we got to learn a lot, but then we need to just be ourselves and share our stories and understand the principles. And it's been great talking to you, Greg.
Well, man, I really enjoyed it. The Founder's Mentality is the name of the book. It came to me. But, to your point, Mac, learning from people with scar tissue is important. It's hard for me to envelop a book written by a PhD that's never held a job, that didn't have a .edu or a .org behind his email address. I need a .com guy that's laid in the kitchen floor and tried to figure out payroll come Monday. That's my kind of learning.
Yeah, that's good stuff. And I agree with you on that. I haven't read many books, and I don't like to read many books where it's just so much research. Research is there's some good stuff in there from time to time, but I don't like those books. I like the story. Just tell me the story and let me pull out the stuff, and it's just awesome. So I really appreciate what you're doing out there. You said some good stuff, and you as a person, I appreciate who you are as a person. First of all, wanting to grow and develop yourself continuously, and got that Kaizen tattoo on your wrist right there, so you don't ever forget. It's habit 7, sharpen the saw, right? Continuous improvement, and from Dr. Covey's 7 habits, and then you want to help the young folks, and you want to help the older folks. You want to help everybody on the spectrum, and you're doing it. You're not just talking about doing it. So thank you for being who you are, and that's one reason I wanted to have you on and shine my light. What a little bit of light it is. It ain't that much. I don't have a big, huge following. One reason I don't play the games. I don't do all the funnel stuff. I don't do the advertising stuff. I don't do any promotion products, and I don't do all that stuff. I just put my stuff out there and let the rest of it I just want to be authentic with people. But I appreciate you coming on and sharing who you are with the world. And I invite anybody. Greg is the real person, the same person you see right here. All you got to do is reach out to him. And we've been sharing his LinkedIn page. We've been sharing his website and your email. Anybody can go back and watch this. If you're not watching the video, I encourage you to go to YouTube, Blue Collar Leadership YouTube channel. Watch the video so you can catch all these links and emails and addresses. Thanks again, Greg.
Well, really appreciate it, Matt. Good to spend time with you. It's early in the day. We're going to get out here and try to make a difference today, and just keep battling every day and see what we can come up with.
Outstanding, sir. So thank you once again, and we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. And as we've been going through this episode here, I think what's wrong with my camera is I've slowly turned my lights down and it's so dark that my camera ain't working in 1080 HD. I think I've had this happen before, and I think that was the problem, because it seems so bright that I turn them down and then I turn them down again, and next time I get on, they have a memory setting. I've turned it down again. Eventually I drop it so low that the camera won't work in the lower light. So I think that's my problem. But anyway, I apologize to those folks, but I'm looking good over there, Greg.
Looking good, buddy. Looking good. Keep it up.
All right. Thank you. So, all right, we're going to wrap it up. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hope you reach out to Greg, and talk to you next time.